Hey, fringe elements, how you doing? I'm responding to your video on morality. Um, I saw your last video on the same topic. You said morality doesn't physically exist. Yeah, clearly, it's something of the mind. It's either part of the mind or something interacting with the mind. So yeah, you can't point to it or anything like that. Thing is, mate, the way you describe morality doesn't sound right to me. It's not a complicated thing. It's something you experience most days. So if you're walking by a back alley and you see some guy rooting around in the trash for food, what happens in your head? Right, immediately you have two choices. Well, it's more basic than that. It's like two impulses. One to help him and one just to carry on and walk past. It's like him being there, even if he hasn't seen me, creates some kind of claim on me. Suddenly, in my mind, as if by magic, this moral claim appears. This is before I've even thought about what to do. It's kind of separate to your rational mind. It precedes it. So I might not decide to help for any number of reasons, and I guess half the time we don't. Another example, okay, so you're in the shopping mall and some kid stands there crying because they lost their mummy. You know immediately you're supposed to help the kid, right? You might not, but you know you should. That sense is what I would call morality, the moral sense. Does this sound familiar? I mean, I'm assuming you experience the same thing as I do. And you also get this when you're going to do something wrong. So you get the impulse to steal something, and immediately, as if by magic, your moral sense tells you it's wrong. And if you go ahead anyway, you feel bad after the event, you feel guilt. Even if no one knows and you totally got away with it, you still feel it, right? Now you might say, well, I don't feel bad, or some people don't feel bad, but if they get caught and they get asked, why did you do that? In my experience, they always try and justify themselves. They make an excuse why in their particular situation it wasn't wrong, or there's some mitigating circumstance. Why do they do this? They do this because they know they went against their moral sense. And secondly, because the guy questioning them has the same moral sense. That's implied. Otherwise, why try and justify yourself to another person? The fact that they're trying to justify their actions to another person implies that the other person knows what they're talking about. Yes? If you think about this, it becomes clear. The moral sense or standard is the same for everyone. If that wasn't true, we couldn't dispute things. When my neighbour parks in my parking space and I knock on his door and I say, you're in my parking space, he doesn't say, so what? He'll say, I'm sorry, or he'll say it was an emergency, or perhaps he'll say, this isn't actually your space, it's communal, you're mistaken in your belief that it belongs to you. But the bottom line is, when we dispute with other people, we're referring to this notion of what's right, and we both assume it's the same. We assume it's the same for everyone. And in my experience, it's pretty much the same all over the world. Sure, there might be differences on certain issues in certain countries, but I've never been anywhere where stealing's okay, or you can ignore a drowning kid. You know, it's real similar all the world over. So in your video, when you said some people see this as a personal preference, it's not a personal preference, it's a common global preference. Now, there are some people who don't have the moral sense. From what I've read, psychopaths don't. They really don't have it. So what they get up to is just personal preference. But that is a tiny minority of people. I think part of the reason that people think morality varies more than it does is because of religious people. So some religious people want to take behaviours that they don't approve of and elevate them to be immoral. They try and piggyback their pet peeves on the back of morality. So in a previous video you mentioned gambling, right? Gambling is a very poor investment decision, but it's not immoral. Same with smoking and drinking. Certainly these things may offend the ethics of a particular religion, but that's something completely different. So where does the moral sense come from? Clearly it doesn't come from religion, because if you go to India, you'll be able to dispute with a Hindu. The fact that you can dispute means your moral framework is the same. And at the United Nations, you have a multiplicity of cultures and religions, and everyone's arguing. The fact they're arguing means they are agreeing on the moral standard. So religious ethics may differ, but morality is the same all over. So morality doesn't come from religion. Another explanation I've heard is evolution, that we evolved this sense biologically, it's hardwired into us. This is also a poor explanation. Evolution is about reproduction of the individual. The moral sense is expensive. It makes big claims on people. If you see a man drowning in a river, it informs you that you need to jump in. That's not a good survival strategy. And if I'm late for an interview and I see that crying kid in the shopping mall, it's not going to help me to stop and assist her. Yeah? And if you reflect on your own experience, the moral sense is not some kind of rational calculation. Can I get something out of the situation? What are the pros and cons? The moral claim presents itself pretty much immediately, and then you decide what you're going to do, what course of action you're going to take. Something else I've heard, it's a social construct, rules for the good of society. I think that's more reasonable. Society definitely works better when people follow the rules. So for example, stealing is wrong. Yeah, that works, and the state enforces it with police, and they teach it in schools. So for negative behaviours, it sounds like a good explanation. But for positive actions, like helping someone, yeah, I don't know, it seems less convincing for that. Also, if you were stranded on a desert island with 3 other people, would you lose your moral sense? People would probably behave badly because society wasn't restricting them, but I doubt they'd lose their sense of right and wrong. Anyway, that is all I wanted to say to you. Think about yourself. What happens in your own mind when you encounter a moral situation? Because you're looking at it from a very abstract philosophical point of view, but we're actually talking about something that you're very intimate with on a daily basis. Yeah? Okay, have a good one.